Welcome to Authored by Us, a podcast celebrating children's books about characters of color or of different cultural experiences, and the authors who bring these diverse works to life. Each week, we invite you to join us as we turn the pages of these bookshelf gems and hear from their creators who understand that stories of diverse experience truly come to life when authored by us. Here's your host, Zenzi Hodge.
Greetings and welcome back, listeners. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Authored by Us. This week, we are joined by author Omar Chin, and he's here to talk with us about his book, Someone is Watching You. Welcome to the show, Omar.
Thank you for having me.
So, Omar, I just want to get right into it. I love the title of your book, Someone is Watching You. And as parents, we know that that's the case. So tell us about why this title was so important for you.
Yes, so the reason why this book title meant so much to me is because I wanted to reinforce, and not in a overly strong way, but just to reinforce the parents that what they do on a everyday basis is truly being watched and being consumed by their child. And it starts from day one. The child may not understand what these words are, what these things mean, but they're picking up on the feeling, the emotion, the action, and it's going into who they are and what they do. So those kind of things is what the young child picks up on, and it's usually what we then start to see as that child grows.
So tell us about the book, Someone is Watching You.
So this book shows the actual relationship between a father and son, and it shows what kind of teachings that father has imparted on the child, how that child goes and moves as he grows, and then when he becomes a father, he now realizes that he is now in the same shoes as his dad. So now he has someone watching him.
That's true. As I read through the book, I looked at it as a passing of the baton because
Yes.
you began with him as a child, but you took him all the way through fatherhood, where he now in turn has someone watching him.
Yes. And to me, it just shows life. Like it's just a small snippet of life, and you learn things from your parents. You learn things just from your environment, and that then shapes who you are and shapes what you do, and then it also shapes how you parent. I know that it has certainly shaped how I parent as well.
Your book opens with a very striking image, and it's of a father in the delivery room holding his son for the first time. And it touched me so much because I have a similar photo of my husband holding our son in the delivery room for the first time. And as a father, I'm sure it brings up a lot of emotion for you as well. There's a look in his face of pride and joy, but then also of responsibility. And your message in this one photo is so clear.
Yes. So when I held our daughter for the first time, a lot of things happened, and it wasn't overt. It more so carried on through, I would say, that first year of her life. And I know that folks often said, "Oh, you don't understand certain feelings until you actually become a parent," and that was true because while I fully understood, okay, I'm a dad now, and what this will mean, certain feelings are there that I truly never had. One that it took me actually a year to actually put a name to it. It was actually it was actually fear. And the fear was that now I couldn't just say that I'll be okay, because even though I knew that I'll be okay in whatever I do or whatever happened, the person that really bears the brunt of whatever happens to me is my child.
Yes.
And my wife will be okay because she's an adult and she's very, very capable of taking care of herself. But this child is new. Like I have to be here to teach this child. And I never really had a fear prior. So I couldn't even put a name to it. I just knew that something in me was no longer balanced. And until I realized that it was the fear of my actions or inactions or just across the board in life, I was able to bring everything back together and act like I normally did. But I literally could not put into words what this feeling was until I finally did. I realized, like, oh, I have fear now. And that's what it was. But yeah, so a lot of things come into play once you become once you become a parent for the first time.
So Omar, you mentioned that fear. You're right. It's the fear of not doing as you should for your child. And I think as a parent, we consider the fact that I cannot do for myself until I can first do for you.
Right.
Now, another thing I notice in the book is that with each physical interaction or each physical action between Damien and Darren, there's also an emotional connection that's growing between the father and son. So when he was bathing his son, he wasn't just physically bathing him, but you talk about him thinking that he will wash away any troubles that his son may face, just as he's washing dirt off of him for that day.
Yes. Now, the reason why I worded it in that way is because once you, well, at least for me, and I'll speak in terms of myself. Once I was taking care of my child and just seeing that everything that was her world, it was us. So we are the protector, we are the providers, and just a simple act of making sure that she's clean, it speaks so much because when she's a few days old, she can't take care of herself. This is my job. This is her mom's job. So just that act of, well, you have to clean your child, yes, but what it actually means for this child, what it what it actually represents, it goes so much further because as a parent, you want to try to make sure that you can wash away all the fears, all the stress, all the pain, everything for your child. It eats at you the moment that you really hear your child cry for the first time. Like, oh, are you in pain? I want to make you not cry anymore. I want to take it away from you. You can only do but so much, but that's there. Even when you know that as your child is growing, your child is learning how to maybe use those tears against you. It's like you still know this, but as a parent, you still feel it and you want to rush up there and say, it's okay, I'm here, I have you, I'll hold you, and I'll make sure that you don't feel uncomfortable. And to me, those things, those emotional connections and ties, they build day after day. And really, you are establishing trust with you and on your child because essentially your child is a stranger to you and you are a stranger to that child. And so it's like from day one, that kid's probably like, who are you? You say that I should eat this food, but why?
Yeah.
And I don't know you. So you have to create that trust.
Yeah.
And that's what every single day is.
Creating trust, getting to know each other.
Yes,
And then
absolutely.
in getting to know each other, they're watching you. They're observing and they're taking their cues from everything you do. And you're
Mhm.
right, from day one. So if that child is crying and you've comforted your child, there's the trust that's built there because, okay, I know that this person is now here for me. But you're also teaching your child in that moment how to receive comfort.
Right.
And there's some key lessons that you weave into the story between Damien and Darren, particularly about how to interact and how to help with other people. So, and not giving away too much, but there's the piece where his father is helping him, and that teaches him how to receive help and to help others. But he also sees his father helping his mother. And that
Yeah.
gives him a foundation for how he learns to interact in his relationships at a later point.
Yes, and there's one more, which to me, I really had to put in there. It was when the son actually he was dumped by his girlfriend. And to me, that was important because as I got older, I started to have deeper conversations with my female friends. And they would often tell me that their views on dating was one way, while me as a guy, I view dating the complete opposite way. And once I started to hear more and more, like, well, this is how we view it. It's not always so fun and so safe for us. And I had to take a step back and realize that we are looking at the same exact thing from two complete opposite viewpoints. And I'm not wrong, but they are wrong either.
Correct.
This dynamic is true and it's happening. So when you tell someone who's a male, here's how you respect women whenever a woman says no.
Mm.
He has to know that. Some point in time, it has to be taught that they can say no too, and it has to be respected. So he gets dumped in the book. His dad says, "Hey, you know what? Guess what? You gotta deal with it. You move on. You think about the time that you two spent together, learn from it, you appreciate it, and move forward in life." And to me, that could be a whole different conversation just from that one page alone in its own book.
Mhm.
But to me, I just try to put different pieces of life, different nuggets, so that the reader can have something to talk about with this child of whatever age, because I write from ages 3 to 9, that this is how things can work, should or might work, and then you just go on from there and you have your own conversation at home.
And it helps with having a conversation at home. That particular piece where Darren is dumped, and so we're gonna go back to that because I remember sharing with my son that his father said, "It's not every person that you like that will like you in turn," and
Very
you have to learn that. And
yes,
so this is a part of life. And so even in this being a book, a book for a younger audience, it's not just teaching a child where they are today. It's to teach them as they move through the course of their life.
through your life, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, you have to enable someone to be ready for tomorrow, because tomorrow hopefully will come. So you want this person to be equipped, and these lessons are important. If you speak to women, you find out that they really wish that more people had these lessons, and I mean that's just one. So to me, it was just really important to put things in there that not only came from my life, from my everyday walk, but think about the people that you are interacting with, and what will your impact on their lives be after you leave their life from that point in time.
And also about making the most of the interactions that you do have, because you may have some children reading this book who may not have their father present, but it doesn't mean that there isn't an uncle or
Right,
a male figure, a mentor that could impart these same types of teachings.
right. Because I mean, as you know, the word father is in there, but that's not. But that's more so just all encompassing. There's a male
Yeah.
role model, and there might not even be a male role model there, but these lessons are still important because life is dynamic, and so this son will still grow up and will have to grow up to be a man. And how do you get from being a boy to being a man? And there are certain things that a man needs to know, that a man needs to be able to do and be able to accept and be emotionally aware of certain things and just move throughout life, because you might want to say that life is fair for everyone, but it's not. Your walk as a woman, my walk as a man will be different, but it's the same world. It's the same kind of life. And we need to be able to interact and grow in as a person in this life.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Omar Chin.
Hi, my friends. It's me, Mr. Pete. I want to tell you about my show, Mr. Pete's Playhouse, and invite you and your children to sing, dance, learn, and create amazing memories with me every week. Join me for my adventures as we find music in the noise and learn to love ourselves no matter where we come from or what we look like. So follow me on social media at Mr. Pete's Playhouse and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll see you soon!
You're listening to Authored by Us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show with your host, Zenzi Hodge.
Omar, your books are very specific in their focus and purpose. They provide inspiration, but they also promote conversation. Tell us about why that was important for you.
Sure. So the whole reason for me to write my books it actually stemmed from one conversation that I had with a friend of mine in 2017, and we were just on discussing her life and what she's been through, and I mentioned just like a few parts of her experience, and then I think she said back to me, it would have been great if I could speak about this thing that had happened to me as a kid and this thing as a teen and so forth. And I feel as though I would have been able to do X, Y, and Z better as I grew. And that kind of clicked to me because I've always written things. Like I've written short stories, little narratives, poems, and so forth. But I've also loved to teach. And it dawned on me that I could actually do both by putting it into a children's book. But now once I do that, how can I write my books to elicit a certain kind of conversation between the reader and the child? Because that's what I ultimately want. I want the kid to be able to read and say, "Oh, I've experienced that." And fast forward to when I published my first book, I actually gave a copy to my manager at the time. And without me telling her why I started to write books, she said, because her daughter, I think at the time was 5. And she said, I don't know if this was your intent, but while I was reading this book to my daughter, she stopped me on one of the pages and said, "Oh, mommy, I go through that." And she said, I had no idea that she was experiencing these things in school. And we just stopped and we had a whole conversation about it. So I said, well, that's perfect because that's literally what I wanted from my books for you and your child to just speak. Because as a person, I, I fully recall going through school and not telling my parents everything. Now, it wasn't a crippling thing, but they didn't know everything. And there's no way that they could know everything because they're not with me in school. They are with me every single day. And I will either hold things back. I may act out in certain ways because I didn't know how to express myself. But having certain kinds of conversations could help to alleviate or at least teach this child how to make it through whatever it is that he or she is going through. And then it won't be there that carries over into adulthood because you never had it resolved as a kid.
Because sometimes parents or adults, we're not really sure how to have those conversations with children.
Right.
And sometimes we need prompts. And so books serve as really great prompts.
Yes.
And so in addition to Someone is Watching You, and I know you mentioned a couple other books, those titles are In Her Shoes and You Are More Than What You See.
Yes.
And so while we intended on having this conversation about Someone is Watching You,
Yes.
I went to your site and I looked through your gallery and saw the images and just some excerpts from You Are More Than What You See. And
Yes.
these are conversations essentially that a child is having with their older self.
Correct.
Because how I see myself today, whether I see it as a flaw.
Hmm.
Older me sees something different, and then it's for me to see myself in that new position.
Yes.
Share with us a little bit about those two books.
Sure. So with the "You Are More Than What You See," there are some parts that dealt with myself, but there's some parts that just dealt with what I'm seeing in life right now. And unfortunately, we what you see in the news, you see a large spike of childhood suicide, and a lot of kids just don't know how to cope with things. They may not know how to make it to that tomorrow to where they can find strength in what's going on. They may not know how to see the beauty in themselves. And I mean, it's really unfortunate, but it's a fact of life right now. So we need to figure out a way to get to these kids early and just build them up because we need to create a stronger foundation out there now because there's so much more access to our kids that just wasn't there when I was a child. I mean, once I left school, that was it. It's my parents and myself. Now, if you have a smartphone or whatever, it's 24/7 access. And it can constantly chip away at even the strongest person, much less a child. So like now, I think that we definitely need to reinforce that beauty, that strength in these kids now, because they're going to need it. Like we need to equip them with more than what we had to have when we were kids, and we need to figure out a more creative way to also do that because the social norms have also changed. So there's constant growth, even with us as being adults, because we can't just say, "Well, my parents did it this way. I'm going to do it this way," and it just won't work. Like it just won't work now. So that was that book. The In Her Shoes book is actually the sister book to Someone Is Watching You, and the In Her Shoes book is the mother and daughter version of this book as well, to where it shows the mother and her daughter and how they interrelate as she grows up, what life looks like for her. It shows her going on her first date. How does she bring up? How does she bring up to her mom like, "Hey, I have a crush on a boy," and what does that do? I think that it's those moments to where you can truly establish that trust with your child. You always want to try to protect your child and say, "Oh, guess what? No dating until you're married." But the reality
More
is,
realistic, yeah.
right. But the reality is, emotions are there. We had them as kids, and your kids will have them as well. So, how do you approach that kind of conversation? And what do you tell your child whenever your child says, "I have a crush"? Or if you notice that your child has a crush, how do you try to let your kid know that you'll be there to actually talk and guide versus trying to shame and to embarrass? Because at some point in time, they're going to act on this crush. Now, you could either be the person that they think about as they're acting or not. So it's really up to you with how you want to actually be this image in your child's life. And then that child then goes on to becoming married, she gets pregnant and so forth, and then she has a daughter. And just it's just the circle of life that we see. And now we get to my current book or my latest book, Someone Is Watching You. And then the book that's actually about to come out in about a month or so, which is called it's called Dancing in the Rain, which speaks on trying to smile through adversity and also being able to keep the spark of that child alive as an adult. So keep your youthful spirit in you.
And don't worry, listeners. I know Omar mentioned 3 additional books. We will have the information and links to his books available in our podcast notes. So, Omar, yes, this is a children's book, but parents buy books for their children, and we
Yeah.
also read with our children. So, parents are also a part of your audience.
Yes.
What do you hope that parents take away from your stories? And also, what are you hoping that these children are taking away from the stories as well?
So, what I hope that parents are also taking away is a gentle reminder for just whatever that topic is. Even as adults, like let's go back to the "you are more than what you see." As adults, we may forget that we had certain dreams when we were kids, and we started going through life, and we started doing what we figured was the correct path, and we get to our 30s and 40s and we're in a job that we're doing because we air quotes have to do because we have to provide and it's a responsible thing to do and we have to xyz dot 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 dot. However, what if you dare to dream to be more? Like even you as an adult, you can be more than what you're currently doing. Now, I'm not advocating that you just up and quit your job because don't come to me for a paycheck. I don't have that for you. But you can transition into doing something else that may speak to who you actually are. It can also give you the kind of income that you need for your life. It can make you happier. And then you can just be a much better person in your day to day than waking up and saying, oh, I have to go to work. I have to go to have to drive through traffic. And by the time your work day starts, you already hate everything about that day. And you haven't even started work yet. And then after all of that, you then have to go home and say, oh, I got to be a parent. Okay, well, I'm already upset and tired. Now, what do you have left to give to your child? And so I think these things, they may not be as on the surface because it's been so intertwined into I have to do XYZ for XYZ that you almost forget about yourself in the whole process.
We'll be right back, listeners.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. Authored by Us is made possible by listeners like you. We thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So we're back with Omar Chin, author of the book, Someone is Watching You. Sometimes the stories we tell are based on our own experiences. So was this book or another book inspired by a young Omar?
Yes, the book called Sam Stutters was definitely something that hit closer to home because as a kid, I used to often stutter. And even now, whenever I tell people that I have a stutter or that I have a speech impediment, they'll say, oh, I don't hear it. But to me, I hear it. Like now, it's much, much better now because I've had to learn to slow down the voice in my head whenever I speak because the sound of my speech to myself is normal. If I hear it back, it is really fast. So I've had to slow down and basically make sure that to me, my words sound very slow in my head. But then I know that it translates to a normal speech for everyone else's ears that is there to receive my speech. It's kind of like how when I was learning how to write, my dad used to say that I'm not writing for myself. I'm writing for the reader. So, and he said that because I used to write very, very small. And he said, who can read this? So I used to say, oh, I can read it just fine. He said, but you don't matter in this. So whoa, I don't matter. So he said, no, you aren't writing for yourself. If you are going to write something only for yourself, then you can write it any which way that you want. But if you are going to turn this in for someone else to read, they have to be able to read it. So I had to relearn how to write and write for other people. And whenever I speak for other people so that they can understand me because it makes no sense to speak in a fast pace and the person listening is saying, can you say all of that again? Because I didn't understand you.
That's
so
right.
so that book definitely speaks to my feelings and my experiences with that and just how I worked through it and what got me to like it's not purely about me, but it's just like how I went from that issue to getting over it. And even though it's a thing now that's there, it's not a crippling fear like it was when I was younger. I shied away from a lot of speaking engagements. And I know that there were things to where I would hear someone express their views,
Mhm.
and I knew I could say it better, but I couldn't say it better because I knew that it would get jumbled and it wouldn't come across the way that I wanted to come across. So I just wouldn't do it.
So, Omar, tell us where we can find not just Someone is Watching You, but all of your books.
Yeah, so all of my books can be found on my website, www.the creativewords.com.
And of course, we'll have a link to your website on our podcast note. So before we wrap up, Omar, because you are an author of children's books, it's only natural that we find out from you. What was the children's book that had the most impact on you when you were a kid?
Okay, so it's really a comic book. At the time, the one that touched home the most, I was reading a comic book about Captain America. And while reading that story, it mentioned that when he was younger, he had asthma. When he was younger, he was frail. And through whatever, he got bigger, stronger, and then he became who he is. And at the time, that really hit home because around that age, I had a bout with bronchitis and had some breathing issues at a younger age. And then I saw that, and that just made me think, like, well, if he could do it, I could do it. So I could get past this kind of thing. And whenever I thought about I wasn't bigger or stronger, I always knew that tomorrow was another day for me to get stronger in some way, somehow. And no matter what it wasn't going to stop me. So that's kind of how I live my life. I may not have everything that I want right now, but just give me a day or two, and then I'll get there.
Now, Omar, someone is definitely watching you, and that is your daughter.
Yes.
So, should she decide to pursue writing as a hobby or as a career, what words would you give to inspire the next generation of writers?
Don't quit. To me, the reason why I write and why I do as much as I do is because I think about who I am as a person and what I've done, and those are two separate things. Who I am as a person, certain things drive me. I've always been attracted to a certain line of work in life. What I've done what was expected of me. Go to school, I go to college, I get a job, I work this kind of job because you're supposed to, in quotes. And then I realized at some point in time, who you are will always come back to you. It's going to be there. You can do whatever you have to do, but who you are will scream at you until you allow it to come out. So, who I am has always been someone that works to create something for myself. In whatever form that is, I've always moved in that direction. So, I say all this to say, don't quit doing what you want to do. You can still do what you're supposed to do, but always harness who it is that you are and move in that direction. And for me, I will be here to guide her and to help her in whatever that is, because I'm not going to kill that spirit that she has in her. I may not allow her to do whatever she wants. Let's not get that confused at all. But I will guide her in that direction that says, okay, I see what you enjoy. Let's find an avenue for you to do this in. And let's make sure that you are successful in it and work damn hard at it. And I will be here with you every step of the way.
Wow, Omar, thank you so much for sharing your book with us. We started off hearing about Someone is Watching You, and then you touched on three other amazing books that you have out there for young readers. And we really cannot wait for your new book that's coming out, Dancing in the Rain. So thank you for being here with us on this episode of Authored by Us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
As we close the cover on this bookshelf gem, I would like to say a special thank you to Omar Chin, my Rattler brother from Florida A&M University, for being with us here on this episode. A special thank you to this episode's sponsor, Mr. Pete's Playhouse. When you are looking for educational opportunities that are also entertaining for your child, please visit Mr. Pete's Playhouse on their YouTube channel. And finally, this episode would not be possible without you, our wonderful listeners. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Authored by Us. We invite you to join us every week as we bring you a new author sharing their book. Until then, happy reading.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Authored by Us. Every author has a story to tell, and we enjoy bringing their stories to you each week. Whether you are listening as a young reader or are sharing this podcast with the young readers in your life, we are delighted to celebrate these stories inspired by diversity and shared in the voice of their authors. Follow us on social media at Authored by Us and subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast app. That way you never miss an episode. Have a gem on your bookshelf that we should have on ours? Visit us online at authoredbyus.com and let us know. Until next time, happy reading.